we are going to write a program to calculate the area of a rectangle. We are going to use this to model refactoring code using methods. We're going to create a method for calculating the area and a method for calculating square feet of paint. We will work with the double data type. We will work with math operators, and we will concatenate strings and variables for readable output. I calculated a couple desk checks ahead of time. You should always do this. Create a couple examples so you know what your results should be so you can check yourself later. So we will come back and use these examples when it gets time to test our data. I switched over to our playground, and we are just going to start to create our variables that we need. So we have a length of the room and a width of the room that are going to be entered. We can assign values to these variables right away. So we are combining a declaration and an assignment. I'm going to have to go look at my desk check. I think the first one was 10 feet high by 65 feet long. And then we are going to need a variable for area. And here is where we will maybe start to talk about right now, because length and width are integers, our area variable could be an integer. We will talk in a little bit about how we might want to change that to be a double. And I'm actually just going to go ahead and calculate everything here in the main, and then we're going to refactor and move this code into a method to show how you can refactor code and develop methods. So our area is going to be length times width, and then we need to calculate the number of gallons. Now the number of gallons comes back as a decimal, so that should be a double. A double data type is anything that's going to be a decimal. I am using camel casing when I'm naming my variables. That's a lowercase and then uppercase and then lowercase and uppercase. Our number of gallons will be the area divided by 150. Later on, we might learn about the fact that we probably shouldn't use or hard code a number in here that's called a magic number, but for our purposes for today, we will leave that. But anytime you have a number in a code that somebody might not recognize what that actually is, it would be better to create a variable for that. If we have time, we might refactor and do that as well. So then if we want to output our number of gallons, doing some concatenation, we have number of gallons. Anything that's a string we need to put inside of quotes, and then concatenate it with number of gallons. And this should produce our results that we want. It is yelling at me. It says a parens is expected, and that would be because I need to put this colon inside of the quotes. We will compile again. I still have an error, and that is because on my variable I've left a space in there. No syntax errors. Go to the playground, run main, and we will see number of gallons 4.0. So if we go back and take a look at our desk check, we're supposed to have 4.333 on that number of gallons because we divided by 150. This has introduced an error that happens frequently. So let's go back and take a look at why that error is happening. And it has to do with data types. We made the data type for area an integer, and we divided by an integer 150. So we have an integer divided by an integer. And when we do that in code, that produces an integer. And so in order to correct that, we can do one or two things. I can divide by a double. If I divide by 150.0, compile and run again. Now we get the expected output. The other thing, which actually might be the better thing to do, is since I know that eventually I might be working with a room or working with something that doesn't have integer data types, I would go back and it would be better probably to change all of these data types to double. That way I wouldn't have to worry about that integer division error, which is a very common mistake. The last thing I like to do if I'm writing this code is to clean up white space. I like to leave a little bit of white space after my declarations before the print line. I like to go to Edit and Auto Layout in case it changes any of my indentions, just to show you what that does. If I change some of these indentions and I go to Auto Layout, it fixes it for me. And compile again just to make sure that it's working, run the program, and we are still getting the correct output now according to my desk check. So the last thing that we might deal with in this program is we know that we really wouldn't buy 4.333 gallons. We would go to the store and probably buy 5 gallons because we know we're going to need more than 4. So this program doesn't take that into effect, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. You would just have to adjust for that when you go to the store. So this video shows you how to write the program all in main. We are then going to take this apart and refactor the code and use methods in the next few videos.